Thank you, Nicolette. That was really interesting and nice to actually have that honest discussion about our assumptions and what we learn along the way, because we don't always confront that, and that advances our conversation so much. All right, we've already got a whole lot of questions, but Mike, I actually wanted to start with you and sort of loop right back to the beginning, I guess, of where our presentations began. Why should someone who's paid taxes all their life and saved up to buy their own home then have to sell it up in order to pay for aged care?
Yes, and I won't quote a newspaper that would love to have that as a headline, but moving on in terms of the actual issues, that we have responsibility for our own lives right through our lives. It's responsibility for gaining employment, for meeting our accommodation needs, meeting our costs of care, personal care, food, all the rest of it. That it's time to move away from the concept that once you move into sort of aged care age, which in itself is moving out because not very many people think at age 65 that they're in that mode anymore, but that somehow it's different and that the taxpayer then just picks up all of these issues. So we have a lifetime responsibility with appropriate safety nets for those who don't have the income or wealth or value in their home to draw on. And when you look at the overall fiscal position of not only Australia but many other countries, when you look at issues of how do you generate the taxes to pay for the costs and the like, it's clear we've got to find alternate solutions. Now, I'll be very interested to have a debate on whether there's an insurance model there, and I have looked at that to some degree, but we do need to shift our thinking to say, well, we have responsibility over our entire life if we have the capacity to contribute, provided there are safety nets. And just one sort of small point on that as well is that in the model that the Productivity Commission proposed and that governments have accepted to date, you think of somebody who has dementia, that they have sort of 10 plus years in fairly high cost care and the like, that we proposed a cap on that, and governments have accepted that idea of a cap around the $60,000 for the care component, so that there is a transfer to the public, the taxpayer, over a period of time, and so that nobody is left there paying endlessly for that care. But it does mean that you have to look at your income and your wealth and your home as sources and opportunities to make your own contribution to that care.
John and Nicolette, do you have any response to that?
Yeah, I just think it is a fact of life. I think Australians keep a disproportionate share of their wealth in their house, and if you look at global comparisons, that's the reality. And it's just the reality that we will have to unlock the wealth in our house to fund our retirement. And the Actuaries Institute did an excellent paper on this that I would definitely commend to people, if you haven't actually read that, about some of the policy options to deal with that.
John?
Yeah, look, I agree. The family home does need to be utilised, and aged care is a significant burden for us.
I know we don't have microphones in the room, but I don't know if you can just sort of do this by voice, but do you get significant pushback from clients about that? No? They're all happy to sort of to just move that on, are they? They've probably got kids clamouring for it.
Can I say, we have changed the debate. You think in 97, for those of us who go back to sort of policy in those spaces, and it did raise headlines in the appropriate newspapers and the like, whereas...
You're going to beat up on the media all day?
No. Yeah, I think you know the sorts of papers I'm referring to. It's not the ABC. But we have moved on, and I think it's a whole range of things. It's the intergenerational reports that are coming out, the general understanding of the community that where Australia sits fiscally, that we're not alone in the world, that other countries have got it.
I think it's also the housing reality. It sort of is kind of started to kind of encroach on that my castle philosophy, if you like.
Yeah. So these things permeate, but it's the Actuaries Institute paper is a very good paper, and I endorse your comments there. So members, please dig that paper out, because it does show that there are a range of ways of doing it. But it is now part of general discourse that it wasn't 20 years ago.
But sorry, you asked who's doing the complaining. It is the children. And, you know, there's a fascinating sort of situation where, you know, people have got all their wealth wrapped up in their houses, and they need it. They've got inadequate retirement incomes. They should absolutely be accessing it, but they're not. And also, financial planners generally aren't participating in this area as much as you would think they would be. But there's a very high perceived degree of risk involved from financial planners in getting involved, particularly because of the children coming back at a later stage and questioning the advice and
totally get that.
Really annoyed that their whole inheritance just seemed to disappear.
Well, I mean, God bless the financial planner who's prepared to go into that discussion and sort of get in between, you know, a valuable home and the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is important to have things like no negative equity and the like. So even in the Productivity Commission report, which is, you know, desperately pro-market, we said in that space that you need to set up a government-backed entity initially, because there isn't the depth of market, and we don't want negative equity headlines and things. That's unfair, it's unreasonable. People would not understand how they've got trapped into it and the like. So there has to be a lot of protection.
Did you want to say anything there, John?
No, I agree.
Okay. Look, there's a question here that's, well, they're all really good questions, so keep them coming. How do super funds propose to deal with both A, underfunded members at retirement, the age-old question, and B, underinsured members prior to retirement, when higher insurance erodes balance and affects retirement, yet insurance is a real and current need? John, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of try and answer that. I guess there's obviously two aspects there. I mean, the initial or sole purpose of super is to fund that retirement. So that's our primary goal, is to make sure that we get as much as possible for members in retirement. We also need to bear in mind, and I look on insurance as a stopgap or a break. You know, if super was going to fund adequate or full insurance for members, that would erode those retirement savings significantly. So, you know, we're looking at CBUS, for example, to provide a lump sum at total and permanent disablement that allows a member to adjust to their new circumstances. I guess the key thing is to make sure that, you know, members understand what they have. If members do have a lump sum or an amount that's invested in super, that can provide a significant amount, or even a small, modest amount over the age pension, say $5,000 a year, that can make a significant difference to members' lifestyle in retirement. So, you know, by us trying to create products and advice to assist members, even very modest, small account balances can actually improve members' outcomes. Nicolette, do you have a view on this one?
Yeah, no, I agree there. I was looking at the next one, sorry.
Pay attention. I'll do the screen. You do these guys.
Listen, I actually think they're making information available to members, and, you know, I thought the CBUS example is a great example of just the level of engagement you can get out of something as simple as giving them a projection. So, you know, I wholeheartedly support you know, that as a mechanism.
But underfunding at retirement is as old as the system itself. Yeah. The impediments to us as, you know, as workers and consumers getting it right, have they changed? Are they changing because of regulatory or environmental changes? Are they changing because of the way we work, or is there still some psychological block to us not putting enough in?
Look, I think, you know, we all struggle, and, you know, it's the day-to-day things. I mean, we've got to pay our mortgage, feed ourselves, and all those other things seem to be a higher priority. We have to encourage people to try and save more, but it's pretty difficult when you've got lots of other competing challenges.
Sure, and we all get that, but you're finding that engagement, actually a more sort of a greater form of even digital engagement, can actually start to change the thinking.
Yeah, I do think that. You know, you see when you look at pre-retirees, they suddenly engage when they've paid off their mortgage, or the other one is their children not paying school fees for them anymore. So there's a couple of, and the other triggers are age triggers, 50 or 55, or a redundancy. So that's when you find people, suddenly refocusing. And I do think in terms of barriers, digital is allowing us to at least access them and talk to them in a way that we couldn't in the past.
Virginia,
Yes.
can I just make a comment on that space as well, that there will be different stages in retirement. It's no longer the sort of retire at 60, 65, spend 20 years, die, and that it's just the linear process. That very much now when people are first retiring, they will either want part-time job or active involvement in some other way, and they'll generally be healthier. That there are triggers that will happen during the retirement phase just as much as there are triggers that happen in the lead up to, when the kids finally go and all of those, bless them, things.
They never go.
Well, they physically leave, but the wallet seems to have some permanent lifeline. I've got 5 kids and, But there will be various stages, and I do keep stressing that these are very individual journeys and they are not just straight linear journeys.
Yeah.
And so we do need different levels of income, and we do need different levels of security and to respond to the different needs over what will now be a sort of 30-plus period.
Well, Mike, there's a question on this, and you probably anticipated, which is the retirement products that can manage different stages of retirement: active, passive, frail stages, associated expected and unexpected expenses, health costs, aged care accommodation. And it'll be good to hear from you guys as well on this. Are the products, are the flexible thinking and flexible systems out there yet?
Leave it to the industry experts to start with.
For one, I don't think there's a product that sits there today that could invest over that 30 or 40 years. It's a combination of products like the SIPA, which we were talking about earlier. It's about advice as well. So, there's probably 4 or 5 or maybe 3 or 4 points through that retirement that there needs to be replanning. And that's not only replanning by the individual, it's also replanning by the family to adjust to the new circumstances. And, some of that is getting on board with that there's not the big inheritance left because mum or dad has to move into that aged care facility.
Yeah. Nicolette?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of flexibility in the account-based pension to access money as and when needed, so that's good. But in terms of those later stage, we're really asking people to rely on whatever's left in their account-based pension or accessing the equity in their own home. So it's not, I think the products are there's a lot of work to be done there.
I've got a question here about the FSI recommendations for SIPAs, for a SIPA. For those, is everyone in the room going to be aware of what those recommendations are?
Yep, they should be.
Do you agree with them?
Yeah, I personally thought that was a very good way of addressing what was, we have a system that isn't funding or isn't looking after that mortality risk. And equally, I also thought that it wasn't good to enforce compulsory annuitisation. I was really worried about what that would do to confidence in our system.
Yep.
So I think a SIPA is it's a good nudge strategy, and it will encourage the system to address longevity risk without forcing people to take it up.
A question here about annuities being characterised here probably quite correctly as a 40-year risk exposure to an insurance company. Against this, we've seen an erosion of trust in the community about financial institutions. So how do we reconcile these? It's a good question, thank you. John, do you want to start with that?
Oh, look, I think we need, the first thing is a bit more competition around the annuity market. I mean, we've got 2 current active providers, which we all know. I think as the deferred annuity market begins to grow, I'm hoping for one that more will start to be in this market. From a CBUS perspective, our members have a higher risk of mortality, unfortunately. So going into a pool with a public sector or a university fund wouldn't be the greatest outcome probably for our membership. So I'm hoping to see a lot more product development from a wholesale perspective, and as well as more providers.
Mike, the question also goes to faith and trust in in institutions.
Yes, and therefore the importance of the regulatory environment to build that trust over years. And all it takes is a few spectacular failures, and we think of the building societies back, or the state banks, way back. It takes considerable time to rebuild those. But I do think that competition in the marketplace is important, as is the ability to transfer the funds from one to another, that when you're in that retirement phase, it's a block of wealth that you have, and therefore what are the opportunities for you to make some decisions yourself and even to spread that risk. So we need to think more than just being, well, I was with X fund in my accumulation phase and therefore I'll be with that fund for the next 40 years in my drawdown phase. We don't yet really fully understand the drawdown phase in this industry. We understand the accumulation phase, and we're just starting to experiment with that drawdown phase, but there's an awful lot more product development and market forces that we need to harness to ensure that that's going to work successfully.
This question was touched on really during your presentation in particular, Mike, but really everyone's aware of it, which is the implications on policy and retirement income of the increasing retirement age to 70 plus. First reflections on that, Nicolette?
So I think it, again, is inevitable. I think there's about 20% of people who just can't work between the age of 60 and 70 because of health-related reasons, but we have to encourage people to work longer. In my particular circumstance, I've got both my parents still running their own businesses, one age 73 and one age 75, so I'm sort of seeing it work out in practice. We did a survey with FSC, CBA, and we asked people what was this one thing that would keep you in the workforce longer. And the most significant factor is they would like to work part-time. Mm-hmm. And that is another one of my little hobby horses, but because it addresses both the age diversity and the gender diversity issues all in one go, but we have to do a better job of facilitating part-time work.
John?
It's from a CBUS perspective.
It excludes a lot of your members, doesn't it?
It's very tough. It's, many of them are broken. Employers don't want to employ them because they're older, or they're carrying significant injury. They just can't work. The skills aren't transferable to the part-time work that we typically see generated for people of older ages. So it's a problem. There needs to be adequate support if something like this is to be proposed to ensure that there's support for those that can't work anymore.
Well, Mark, in your answering this question, I also just wanted to feed into it a reflection on a point you made in your presentation, which was about persistent disadvantage and why there seems to be such little policy focus on assisting them. I guess in a sense it sort of feeds into this particular group and others as well who simply can't be expected to work to that age.
No, and the point of some of our research on persistent disadvantage, one is that it is a group that isn't looked at very much. So there are peak groups that look after those with specific issues, whether it's a disability issue or a health-related issue or whatever. But that group of deep and persistent disadvantaged in our society, and they are there all the time, in the good times and the bad times, but nobody actually worries about them. But there are sort of variations within that group, as in anyone, that you really don't want a one model fits all. And there are some who sort of bob around on what I sort of refer to as the surface, that they'll string together within the household. We're not talking individuals because these operate at household level, string together a few jobs, stay out of the road of any criminal interaction with the police and the like. Their health holds together, and they'll accumulate a bit of wealth and pay the mortgage or get a rental background and the like. But then it only takes one thing for them to sort of, the household to fall back under the water. But there are others in this space who are just sort of permanently have got themselves into not got themselves into circumstances, have got them into that stage. And we don't spend enough time worrying about how to help them. It's not about doing things for them or to them. It's about helping them and to build up their capacity to survive better in life.
And there really isn't, as you say, much sort of policy reflection on that, is there? No.
Sadly not.
A question here about retirees wanting a one-stop shop. What type of institution is best placed to provide this? What regulatory barriers stand in the way of this? Do you believe that they do? It's sort of my impression that people are very resistant to, particularly later in life, having to then go and, renegotiate the way that you've set up your retirement income, deal with another institution, transfer across and the like. In fact, you get very resistant to that change as you get a bit older, and there's fees along the way, which you become increasingly resentful about. Nicolette?
Yeah, I would firstly think the financial planner is the one-stop shop. So most customers don't really think of it from a product perspective. They think of it from who's going to help me and give me some advice. But I do think, particularly in later life, it is a real problem if you've got your money all over the place, actually remembering where it is. So from that point of view, I think a one-stop shop's probably quite a good idea.
John?
Look, I think the financial planner may have been sort of in the past, is currently for those wealthy enough to be able to see them. But, with more and more people coming through, having, certified financial planners to sit in front of every couple approaching retirement or in retirement is probably not financially feasible. So I think there is a role for the banks and super funds to facilitate the services. They might not provide them all themselves, but
but the bigger institutions should do it.
So a clearinghouse of services that they can refer to. Yeah. Some will be able to do over the phone. Some will be able to do with robo advice and the like. But there is a definite role for that facilitator.
Mike, from a more regulatory perspective, what do you think?
Yes, you do have to look at the incentives that drive the advice that's provided, and happily there has been some useful debate in this space, but sometimes we also do a bit of backsliding in response to some pressures, which is unfortunate. But the more people can be educated, but that the education is from responsible providers, then I think we're going to get better outcomes. So one-stop shop has its limitations, and I think people are better off getting a diversity of information, but you need a default, just like we have with the default super and a default one-stop shop that at least provides sound, functioning, reputable advice. And we've done that in aged care. We've set up a gateway that is the one-stop shop for what we currently call aged care, which hopefully we can get rid of as a concept later. But then you can build on that, so you get sort of, sound, solid, reliable, basic advice, and then you build on that.
Just finally, on that concept of getting rid of the concept of aged care, what should it be called instead? Give us the phrase.
You wouldn't have aged care. People would just live through their lives at different ages and stages and phases and with different needs, and that they would draw wherever possible on the marketplace for the services they need, whether it's a gardener or somebody to come and do the house cleaning or to help them with the shopping and the like, and where they need financial or other support to draw on that those market opportunities, then that's where the government steps in. But you just move away from this concept of you've now entered into aged care.
Yeah, it's a nice idea. We'll just call it life care, shall we? Just all the way through from.
Can we start now?
And we start now. But first, we have lunch. Can you please thank our speakers today, Mike Woods, John Setterwee, and Nicolette Rubinstein. Stay where you are. Okay, we're serving lunch out there, I think. No, lunch is going to be served in the residence and downstairs in Collins' kitchen, I'm sorry. If you have special dietary requirement, your meal's going to be served in the residence, as I mentioned earlier. Please fill in your presenter feedback form so we can monitor this conference and make sure we do even better next year. If you've registered for the airport bus departing at 5:45 p.m. tomorrow, please be sure to cancel your seat at the registration desk if you're no longer planning to travel on the bus. I'll see you back here for Plenary 3 this afternoon at 3:45, so enjoy your lunch, enjoy your concurrent sessions. You've got them all in your handouts. Have a good afternoon. I'll see you in a bit. Thank you.